Welcome to the second episode of the ABCs of ERP and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to exploring the world of enterprise resource planning systems in business and technology. In today's episode, we will be discussing the benefits and considerations of having a business's ERP system in the cloud. ERP systems are critical for managing a company's core business processes, and the decision to move them to the cloud can have significant impacts on an organization. We'll be exploring the advantages of cloud-based ERP, such as scalability, flexibility, and reduced IT costs, as well as the potential challenges and considerations with having your ERP in the cloud. So, Nirav, welcome back. Episode 2 of the podcast.
Episode 2. Yes.
We survived episode 1.
Yeah.
We're back for a second go.
Second go. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. We learned a lot on the first one. I learned that I shouldn't be moving around too much. I think it might give some of our audience members a little bit of a slight headache. So I'll stay as still as possible here. But this is fun. This is fun doing a podcast. It's like just having a conversation. I'm enjoying it.
Good, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I know we said last episode, didn't we? We had so many chats about all the times that we've chatted beforehand, and we've said every single time, oh man, if only we just recorded that, we could have come out with a good podcast. That would have made a brilliant podcast episode. And now, of course, now we're struggling, thinking, what did we chat about? What subjects should we actually record now?
Yeah, exactly. I think all those conversations, led up to this podcast, essentially for us, and I'm sure we're going to be able to find ways to bring those old conversations back. We just don't remember what these are now, but they'll come back to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How you been then since the last week? What have you been up to? Anything new happening?
I've been good. I've been out to Indiana here. That's like a sister state of Illinois. Went out there for a couple of days, came back. It was fun. Recharged the batteries. Drive was all right, like 3-hour drive, but it was cool. I saw some family, and we're back. This week is, I got a busy week ahead with some ERP implementations, but excited to talk about this topic today.
Cool. Let's go. So number one that we got on the list then is probably I would guess the most important thing from a cost perspective is the fact that typically cloud ERP infrastructure, we see reduced costs.
We do. We see I think cost savings across the board. Historically, in a full ERP implementation, you had to buy servers, right? Licensing was perpetual. You had to buy licensing that was thousands of dollars per user. You had to make sure you had enough memory available on your servers, buy multiple servers. You had to have somebody dedicated to essentially take care of that server, right? So you had that overhead on that labor cost, but a lot of those costs have gone down, because you're paying essentially for a fully managed environment at this point, ERP, which makes the proposition to get to ERP a much easier decision now, because you don't have to do that upfront setup, making sure you have the right person, making sure you have the right hardware, right? Making sure you have the right licenses and so on. So now with one low cost, you could essentially get all that per month, right? It could be $100 per user per month, or it could be, $200 per user per month. But essentially, you're not having to hire, essentially, if you don't have to, right? Don't have to hire a dedicated IT resource to manage your ERP servers or infrastructure. You don't have the overhead of making sure that you're thousands of dollars for licensing. This licensing is all bundled together. And when you want to upgrade or when you have to do different things, you don't have to worry about additional cost that come, because it's all wrapped up nicely in a bow, in a single unit cost per user.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the other associated costs with having like an on-premises server is, these server racks, they suck a lot of energy, especially when, I don't know what it's like over there for you, but the rest of the world, Europe at least, is going through an energy crisis, sky high prices of energy. And of course, it's not just the actual servers that take in energy, it's the cooling systems running 24/7.
Right. Yeah, totally.
That is now gone.
I think it's reducing your carbon footprint. that's really helping in that initiative, right? A lot of companies are behind that. Microsoft is behind it. There's a lot of companies that are understanding the damage that's kind of happening in the environment. So going this route on the cloud, where these kind of data centers and Azure and AWS and all these different places that are hosting different ERP systems now, essentially they're designed to emit less energy, be optimized, provide infrastructure that companies normally would not have. Okay,
Yeah.
where you're getting real time, 99.8% SLAs essentially, where they're guaranteeing that the system's going to be up. Versus, if your internet goes down and you're relying on an ERP system's down, right? If you're doing everything
Yeah.
in house. So from that perspective, that's a lot of headaches removed for anyone that's looking to migrate to the cloud, because that is all up there. You have a browser connection, right? You have an internet connection. If you're not in the office, let's say your office IP goes down, you could go quickly to Starbucks or Panera and jump into your ERP system and start completing the work that you need to do. So I think from that standpoint, it's phenomenally a big advantage to move old legacy systems on premise to the cloud, because you're preventing data loss. You are making sure that you're on the latest and greatest firmware, software, Windows platforms, right? All these other things that that these big data warehouses are basically managing for you. And now you could, right? There's different options. If you want to do the full public cloud option, where, for example, Microsoft is managing that whole environment, ERP environment for you, or AWS is managing your full Acumatica environment. But essentially, you could do what's called a private cloud, where you are buying servers, not physically, but you're buying server space, on a private cloud provider, and you're loading the software on there, essentially.
Yeah.
That's another way to cost save, to go to the cloud, where if you're not ready to jump straight to the cloud with all your data, but you want to take it kind of halfway, there's a private cloud option as well that could help reduce your costs. From not having servers, right? Not having to have a dedicated person to manage that server, because that's what all these providers out there that do that, these hosting providers, they'll manage all that for you, and then maybe you just have someone that manages the ERP environment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same kind of setup with websites. I know when I launched my website, I was looking into hosting it locally myself. So, buying a server, a small server rack, a couple of spin up disks. But then, of course, I'm thinking, well, now it's down to me for upkeep. It's down to me to power the thing. And we always say that, time is money. I know it's cliche to say that, but it's true. You don't need that dedicated resource, especially when there are systems where you can spin up servers so quick.
Yeah.
That are going to be a lot more robust than anything you can probably do on-prem. And of course, on-prem is you buy a server system now, you can get as many racks as you want and RAID backups as you want, but that is a dying technology in terms of how quickly technology progresses. So if a new server infrastructure comes out in 6 months' time, what do you do? Does that mean you have to replace all your servers to get onto a new infrastructure? But of course, with cloud, the firmware is not something you have to deal with. That's just updated and replaced, as and when it needs to be replaced. And it's not a cost. You won't see those costs the same way as you would on-prem.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate there. It's, the whole increasing the ROI for your ERP system, right? You can see massive value there. You're going to see a massive shift in increasing the ROI investment, right? Your ERP hosted on premise, hiring somebody, wages are going up. And not saying hiring somebody's bad, right? I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's other, initiatives in a company outside just an ERP system, but you have that overhead, you have the server overhead, the maintenance of that server, upgrading that server year over year, right? And servers aren't cheap. They're not cheap. They're pricey. They take up space. And if you rely on that, you could have lost time, essentially. So with a cloud transition, a cloud transformation, you're going to see massive ROI improvements on that, and the reliability and security that comes behind it is going to be bar none.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to that then. So security, we've said that these servers, on-prem servers, they take up space, and they take up space in your premises. So with that, you've got the security element. How do I secure my physical assets on site versus something that's in the cloud? It's not a tangible thing. Well,
Yeah.
understandably, there is a server somewhere sitting in some massive building somewhere in the middle of nowhere that Microsoft are securing themselves. But in terms of a business owner, there's very little in terms of physical security. We'll get onto the
Mm-hmm.
software side of security, but the physical
Mm-hmm.
security is done for you. It's gone. Not only the space, which you can
Yep.
allocate to, wherever your server was, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
within your warehousing system or whether it's part of your sales office. It's the fact that physically you haven't got to do that.
You don't have to do that, and those a lot, manufacturing distribution companies, they're running a lot of stuff on in house. They have cages, and within the cage they'll have servers in there. They'll have different type of assets in there that they need to secure, essentially, right? But that always runs a risk. When you have your data on premise, that physical server is going to run a risk of um, not just the breach potentially of anyone on site, but what about animals, right? They could come in, right? They come into your business, and all of a sudden they're eating up some of your wires, and all of a sudden, right? That's happened. That's happened. I've had a customer that had
Oh,
some
really?
raccoons, actually. Yeah, some raccoons somehow come in from came in from the roof, made their way down to like the server room, and like just ate up a bunch of a bunch of wires.
We don't have
You
that
know,
problem in the UK. I don't think that we have too many raccoons eating through our
yeah,
Ethernet cables over
yeah,
here.
yeah. They get hungry. They get hungry here. I don't know what it is. We should start just feeding them, these guys. But I don't know. But they, that's a risk. Flooding, right? You all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're in an area that floods. You know, Often you get some torrential rain that comes down. Florida just got hit with a hurricane, right? And really bad. I mean, it really just leveled. When I say leveled, Pete, it leveled Florida, and I think it was like the southwest of Florida, like Naples, in that area, pretty much just ravaged. That Imagine you're a business there, you had servers on site that you relied on for your data, and your data was just sitting on there, and you didn't take the precaution to move that server out, and you evacuated. I don't know. I don't know. It's a very low chance you're going to get that data back, right?
Yeah.
Hurricanes, right? Earthquakes, so natural disasters that could happen. So yeah, I mean, totally. So somebody bumping into the server, right? If it's just sitting there in a box in the warehouse, a forklift goes by and runs it over. Oops! Oh no! Right?
Well, you say that. A company I used to work for a few years ago used to have their servers in their sales office, and of a night time, they used to have an outsourced cleaning company used to come in and clean, and they were cleaning up, and they managed to knock out the port on the wall, just rip the plug out. But that was behind kind of a storage unit, so I think
Uh-huh.
they bumped into the storage unit, which then in turn hit the port that was behind there.
Oh my
And
gosh!
of course, we came in the next day, couldn't connect. We used to
Oh
VPN
no!
in,
Right?
or connect to the VPN, and then RDP in. Nothing
Mm.
was working. It took us
Oh no!
hours to find out what it was, and it was
Oh
just
my!
this Ethernet cable that got pulled out.
Oh my gosh! Is that something else? It's like you're just so reliant on that, having that
Yeah,
to be, on site and working. I mean, you're relying for it to work, and when it doesn't, the troubleshooting probably goes hours and hours behind troubleshooting it, and here it was just a plug,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
to plug it
absolutely.
in. So yeah, it's that security for the data that's hosted on site. Right, it's an important point, right, for companies, especially now since past COVID, everyone's working remotely.
Mm,
Do you need that data, right? That data needs to be on the cloud, right? It needs to be accessible, right? I mean, Microsoft started that really nice, kind of nicely. I mean, Google did as well, right? SharePoint, Google Drive, right? Data's going to the cloud, pretty much saying, even take it off your local laptop, put
yeah,
it on the cloud, because your local laptop could be stolen, right?
mm,
Could be hacked, right? So that whole mentality, just keeping
yeah,
things stored locally is almost, I feel like, that's just me. I think it's almost like obsolete. All
Yeah.
my stuff, is on the cloud, and I have very little. I remember when I used to buy laptops. Remember buying laptops? How much memory does it have? I need I need 1 T, or I need, whatever it
Yeah.
was, right? Because you're storing so much locally. It's like now it's like I get
Mm.
the lowest model. I don't need that much because everything's just
Yeah.
moving to the cloud, for me.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
definitely a shift.
And you do see that, a company like Apple, for example, they still have base models coming out with
Yeah,
256 gig as memory.
yeah, yeah,
And you think,
yeah.
well, you see people online that are like, it's 2022. How can they still have 256 gig as a base model? It's like, well, look at the cloud. The cloud is probably faster than your read write speed of your old spin up hard drive.
Exactly. Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I think pretty soon I'm gonna have more memory on my phone than
Yeah.
like than my laptop.
Yeah.
Um,
But even you think in terms of people that might not have thought, "Oh, I've never dealt with the cloud and things like that. They don't realize that there's more on the cloud in their day to day lives than maybe first meets the eye. So it was to say 10 years ago when you lost your phone, you lost everything. But now it's just like if your phone got run over or lost, it's just you can get another one. And it's all backed up onto either Google Contacts or if you've
oh
backed it
yeah,
up on iCloud, like you can pull your entire phone, apps, contacts,
absolutely,
messages.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, as soon as you get a new phone now, right? You put the new phone next to the old phone, and it immediately tells you, "Do you want to transfer?"
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
it's like there's no reason to even like press a button.
yeah,
It's pretty phenomenal, and
yeah. It's
so
crazy.
it's a security, asset security is important,
Yeah,
because you have a lot of data. You live, breathe, and die by your data,
yeah,
in a lot of situations, and you don't want to have only one source. You want that to be available, backups, right, restorations, and all that stuff is so much easier on the cloud.
yeah. Well, have you got any experience on maybe ERPs that have secondary levels of security in terms of compliance? Because I know that there's some industries that um, you have to at least demonstrate um, compliance with certain healthcare reasons, or even if you're handling card transactions, sometimes businesses won't deal with you if you don't show a certain level of security implemented into your business.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's different by industry. Automotive is a good one you talked about there. Another one is DoD, the Department of Defense. Here, they have what's called the ITAR requirement, the International
Okay.
Trades Arms Regulation Act, and it's you have to, to do implement at anyone that does business with DoD is you need to be able to host a database in a government compliant cloud environment, and what that
Right.
means is that only users within the country could actually access that environment.
Okay.
So there are definitely strict regulations there, international standards, right? There's the data center, like for example, Azure. They have strict compliances for SaaS. SaaS 20 is a big requirement there, in order to be able to host data on the cloud. These big data companies, cloud companies, are basically all have all the regulations and security around the different environments that they host over there. So
Mm,
all that is all pretty much baked in to your single user cost. It's not, if you
mm,
decide to go into a separate industry, you're not going to have to pay extra just because there's a new requirement,
mm,
right?
mm.
Regulation requirement. Now there could be functional requirements different, right? That's all ERP and functional processes and stuff. But like hosting your data, for example, yeah, there could be, but they're going to be able to do it securely. So that's a big, huge benefit. I remember when I started implementing, it was like '04. I was working for a company called Fujitsu. I was implementing a product called Glovia, and they were touting that their data centers that they hosted the solution were SAS 20, SAS 20, SAS 20. And every time I told a customer, like, what is that? They bought it, but they had no idea, what those type of compliance are. Essentially, what that means is the backup plans. What backup plans do these data centers have in case something were to happen, an emergency, catastrophe, right? What could happen there? And these guys are fully buttoned up in all those different disaster recovery plans, backups of your data, and multiple backups of your data,
Yeah.
restoration. So it's really a fail safe system essentially, right? It's gonna ensure you can sleep at night.
You mentioned something that leads us on to our third point here nicely: accessibility. So I guess this works two ways, doesn't it? It's the people that require access to your ERP and better control of people that don't or shouldn't have access to your ERP. So I know obviously since COVID, things have changed. Whole industries have changed where people who used to go into the office every day may now well be set up with a VPN connection to access their on-prem server.
Mhm.
Of course, with the cloud, these ERPs are browser-based. So the accessibility and I guess kind of um, I would say people kind of being used to that already having to log into a system, even people that might not use or have used an ERP on the cloud. It's as simple as going to a website address for your. I know Business Central is like that. You just go to there, you log in with your new normal username and password, and it's the same as what you're used to logging into, Facebook or Instagram or
Mhm.
whatever it happens to be. So let's maybe split this in two. So let's talk about the accessibility for people that should access your ERP.
Yeah, it's the main stakeholders, right? They need access to the business, and that's going to be, essentially the users, internal users. Then you have external users. You can have customers if you implemented a customer portal, vendors with the vendor portal, um, third-party integrations. Now that is not specifically a person; it's a third-party system, but that data is important to pass securely, so that data gets into the right hands, and they can
Mm,
make the proper decisions to keep the respective businesses moving forward. I mean, you know, with on-premise deployments, a lot of the user security and setup is very complicated with the Active Directory authentication process through
yeah.
Microsoft, right? It's really complicated. With cloud, though, right? Cloud-based ERP to separate authentications, right? You could access these different solutions remotely. You don't have to worry about that. Oh, does this person have the proper Active Directory credentials? Where you have to contact support, put in a help ticket. By the time they have access to it, they no longer need a system anymore, right? They immediately, if they want to go and use it, right, they have their credentials set up, and boom, they go ahead and log in. You can log into multiple systems that way. So accessibility is big, and the cloud makes making third party solutions a lot more accessible because it's secure at
Mm,
the end of the day. So you want the users that log into your system day to day, that they're doing sales order transactions, purchase order transactions, planning, receiving, shipping, right, all have access to the system because they are your operational users day to day, and they could access it anywhere, right? Let's say a manager wants to then log in the system and look at some inquiries, or do some work in the system, publish some numbers, right? And they're not in the
mm.
office. Well, launch a browser. Don't worry about the VPN connection where somebody unplugging a server potentially, and you can't log in, right?
Yeah,
So it's that in that front, I think the cloud makes that whole collaboration so much easier for everybody internally. And then you have the customers and vendors that need access to your systems, and the data is moving seamlessly between those solutions. And you have these web services, APIs, that are securely set up with their third party solutions to send data back and forth, right? Whereas
yeah,
APIs before third party solutions, I mean, it was um, I wouldn't say monumental event, but it was pretty close to it because you have a database on prem, on your server. Now you have to maybe somehow bring in the data of a third party system onto the existing server, refresh that data potentially, or have another web server available so you can make a connection to another solution, right? I mean, it just really really adds so many unnecessary steps.
yeah.
And with the whole cloud migration and move with ERP, I think it blows the doors open to um, endless possibilities to not take your ERP data, but move, look at other third party solutions that you need as part of your business.
Yeah, I think it really opens up the doors for possibilities of customers or suppliers or support companies. As soon as you can say, look, here's our credentials or here's our API endpoints, it's going to be the bog standard, either REST or SOAP, one of the
Yep,
other APIs. It's going to be so
exactly.
much easier to integrate with someone else's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, IT support
Yep,
is
IT
going to be a lot
support.
easier.
Oh,
So gone are the days really of having to set up a team viewer connection for your IT support. They can just load up a browser and go straight into your ERP and find out what the issue
it's
is.
this is the modern workforce. This is the modern workforce, and this is how you get the most productivity out of this modern workforce is to have these tools available to your users anywhere, anytime,
Yeah,
essentially, with a reliable, right, reliability that they could connect, complete their work. I mean, the last thing you want is a user, they have a sales order they need to put in, but they can't because the system is down because they're doing a server maintenance on your box. Oh boy,
yeah.
right? You had a rush order here. You need to get that in the system. And now the salesperson's called this customer saying, "Oh, we're going to get it to you today by 3." But the CSR can't take that order and do anything with it. It's just sitting on the table, right? Sitting in their desk.
Yeah, yeah.
It's to get that order, get that order in as quickly as you can, and let's meet our customer due date.
So the other section of, I guess, accessibility is the security and who shouldn't access it. So I know obviously with an on-prem server, for example, it's a little bit more difficult. You've obviously got the physical side of it with your server sitting there, but you've also got the software side. So VPN management, RDP management, two-factor authentication. So all these things that the company has to consider
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
versus a cloud. Now, two-factor authentication is standard.
yeah. Ransomware, hackers. It's a huge thing right now. They're just they're just prying on companies that have their databases on site at their locations because they're sending an email to somebody in that organization. That person can't tell whether it's real or fake. It's a phishing email that's coming in. They're opening it up. Boom, you have the virus. It's internal. That thing is going around finding where the database is everywhere, right?
Yeah,
It finds
putting
a
a back door
database.
in.
Yeah, finds a database. Boom, locks it down. Locks it down. And now there's like a 256 encryption key, so you couldn't even try to guess the password to open up that
Yeah.
database anymore, right? And I've heard this story so many times, that we were just about to think about going to the cloud. Well, then you should have made the move. Why have you not? And it just happens, right? As soon as you thought that you want to do it, you should just do it earlier. You should always do it yesterday. And now they have to spend 50,000, 20,000, 30,000 to wire money. That's not even guaranteed you're going to get the key
Mm.
to unlock your database, right?
Yep.
And then that hacker is going to the next database, right? It's a numbers game for them.
Mm.
It's a numbers game. Send an
Yeah, absolutely.
email to somebody in this organization. Boom, and if that person opens up the email,
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
susceptible. You're wide open. Whereas you don't get that. It's so super secure. You're not gonna your data's not gonna be encrypted. It's you're not gonna get a hacker to get to your data, right? It's super super secure in that way. And I would say that is the true, right. One of the biggest benefits there is that you can sleep at night knowing that
Mm.
your data's not gonna get attacked. Your operational data, your ERP is gonna be available all the time.
Yeah. Okay, that leads me on to the next point, updates. So when we talk about updates on-prem versus cloud, you said it just there, really. If it's down for maintenance as an on-prem server, I know I've had it before where the IT support company might ring up and say, look, we need to push a critical update. Can we do it this afternoon? Thinking, well,
Hmm.
we're running a business right now. We're processing lots of orders.
Yeah.
Can you do it after office hours? And they've said, well, we finish at 5 p.m. Like, well, so do we.
Right. 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 Yeah.
So you're in a bit of a stalemate in terms of when you can do it.
Of
It's like
course.
we
Of
can't just
course.
stop
Yeah.
running our business so you can push an update that may or may not fail. So we might not be able to do anything else for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Compare
Yeah.
that to cloud updates. I guess
Hmm.
there's two things here. One, it's the actual time of which the updates are pushed.
Hmm.
And two, how the updates are pushed. So, of course, with cloud-based, they are often um, from the ERP provider. I guess it's one of these things like we know, for example, Microsoft for their BC and their Dynamics platforms, they do two major ones. April and
Hmm.
October for their main overhaul of whatever. But it
Yep,
just happens,
exactly.
doesn't it? It's just
Right.
before it comes out, it gets released. A load of
Yep.
release notes. You can
Hmm.
or you can obviously disable the updates should you not want them, but it's something
Right.
that's pushed
Yep.
um, rather than something where you have to fit it around your business when you're going to do it.
Right. 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 Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where, you know, these updates, they essentially are full projects when you're looking at updates and new releases for on-premise type of ERP solutions, because you're taking the system down, you're doing a backup, you're merging code, then you got to test that code and see if that code is going to work with your current modifications that you have in your ERP systems. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, right? Um, and then you got to do a full cutover potentially, and then train users of new functionality, and then go live with the new upgrade. I mean, they are projects. They are projects versus now, right? You upgrade, you upgrade the data, right? You upgrade the standard code, anything that you've done in terms of a customization, you just test, kind of there on your own, what we call extensions or apps, at least in the Microsoft side, right? Same on the Acumatica side. You test those, just ensure they're working, and pretty much overnight, you have all the new code upgraded essentially through a cloud solution. Right? Microsoft came out with a very interesting stat actually, saying that companies that aren't up to date with their ERP software, right, they're 5% less likely to achieve complete and on-time orders. They're 6% least likely to meet internal schedules, 4% less likely to maintain accurate inventory, 8% less likely to receive timely data for decisions, right? And 3% less likely to see improvements in profitability. And,
Yeah.
if you don't keep up with your ERP software and on the latest and greatest, footprint, right, you're going to be missing, some streamlined processes that you could be doing. Your users could be, taking much longer doing transactions than they need to, right? I think we talked about this in the last podcast. It's always better to be in the business than be on the business than in the business. What I mean by that is, you don't want to be a kind of what I call a data entry person. You're not adding
Yeah.
value, right? You want to be able to make decisions for the business, make sure the business is profitable. Where can we cut cost, right? Where can we get our vendors to provide us maybe better product? Or how can we be more engaging to our customers so we understand their needs, so we can fulfill their requirements for products? So those are the things that you want to do, that you should have your users do, more than worry about oh, this next big release that Microsoft has or Acumatica has, and it's going to take us 100 hours to complete it, right? That to me is a zero value type of engagement.
And it's even the ones in between, all these incremental updates and bug fixes to just get pushed.
Yeah.
You've got those bug fixes the next time you log in to your
Hmm.
ERP versus
Yeah.
maybe your IT support company. Oh yeah, we won't push that update. Oh, it's just a small incremental, but it could be
Yeah.
something worthwhile. I know
Exactly.
I've seen things where it's like, oh yeah, you can't do that in this version of Nav because it crashes when you do that, or oh, it doesn't
Hmm.
allow you to do that, or oh, you have to click that checkbox because it doesn't do it for you. You think all those kind of things, they do add up, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They absolutely add up. I had a customer that was on like Nav 4.0, and they wanted to go to Business Central, the latest version, and they realized that they should have sooner took the initiative to go to the cloud, because a lot of the stuff that they were doing that they had customization for was out of the box.
Yeah.
So for them to have that out of the box and they get automatic upgrades, like you mentioned, Pete, April and October by Microsoft, and they don't have to maintain a separate set of code, right? Huge savings just right there.
Hmm.
And some customers are just scared, saying that, oh, our data is on premise and we're so used to it this way, um, and this is the only thing we know. But that's where you kind of have to take a deeper look at your business. Are you really hurting your business, you know,
Yeah.
by kind of believing that, versus, where you have this opportunity to really streamline your IT infrastructure
Hmm.
and be able to use better tools to understand your business better, to increase profitability and decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's, of course, the scalability side of things. So you're kind of limited in terms of on-prem. If you've got server racks, they're filling up. they don't just expand in memory. You don't just end up with a 2 terabyte server is now a 4 terabyte server. You have to go out and buy another 2 terabyte server. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but of course, with cloud, I guess this kind of ties back into the lower costs. You have to um, realize that you only pay for well, it scales. You only pay for the amount of service that you need. And should you need more
Right.
space,
Yep.
or should you want an extra redundancy, you just
Hmm.
you almost just bolt it on. You
Yeah.
kind of I guess it's automatic scaling, isn't it? So it just automatically can provision additional resources as and when the workloads need. And of course, you can
Yeah.
scale that back down. So if you're a business that might be quite seasonal, and in the winter period that's your busiest time of the year, you can scale up to accommodate for that.
Yeah.
And then if you want, scale back down for the quieter months.
Yeah, exactly. And Microsoft does that, and AWS and Acumatica, they look at your usage. So depending on how much usage you have on that box or your environment, they may move you to ensure that you have maximum, right, performance of your ERP system versus you're on premise, you're stuck with what you got until you upgrade that.
Yeah.
Right? And so if business moves, business getting bigger, you need data faster, you have a lot more people doing transactions, you're limited by what you have.
Mm.
Versus on the cloud, right? That's being monitored, right? They're saying, okay, yeah, you've increased in performance, your performance has gone down a little bit, so they'll move you to another box. So now you have that same performance that you would expect, or what users would expect when they're transacting in the system. So
Mm.
huge,
Mm.
huge, huge benefit there.
Yeah, absolutely. Nirav, look, we banged on about all the wonderful advantages to cloud-based ERP. However, we need to probably balance it out with some considerations. So before everyone goes and have a look at the wonderful world of cloud-based ERP, there are some considerations to take on board. One of them is the fact that internet connectivity is getting more robust these days, but it is something to think about. You know,
Absolutely.
maybe an on-prem server, the local area network will still be up. You might not necessarily need an internet connection to at least process sales orders. Whereas if your internet provider went down, um, you have got that kind of issue. I guess you said earlier you can move to the Starbucks. Other coffee shops are available. Um,
Yeah.
unless Starbucks want to sponsor this podcast, then we'll keep
Yeah,
saying about
there you go.
Starbucks.
I think
Um,
so.
their gingerbread latte was really good this year.
Yeah, there you go.
If any
I just
Starbucks,
had I just had the pistachio latte. Phenomenal. I'm telling you,
oh really?
it's really good. It's really good. Yeah. I don't
Okay.
know. Do you guys have that in the UK yet?
No, I haven't
Pistachio.
seen that.
I don't know if they do like a lot of sampling here first before they move it down there, or is it vice versa? I'm not sure.
I'll have to look
Should we,
out. No, we get the pumpkin spice latte, and then nearer Christmas they come out with the gingerbread latte.
gingerbread? Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
nice.
yeah. That's pretty good. Going back though to, and I understand what you're saying there, Pete. Is what if your internet goes down, right? Another big area right now is replication data management. So there, you're taking basically a mirror, right? Whenever there's internet connection, right? You might have like a small box available or whatnot, right? The cloud, you're making a mirror image of what's on the cloud, right? So it's just sitting there, right? Maybe
Mhm.
locally. So in case you don't have internet connection, you would it would automatically basically say, okay, now you're going to write to the database as local, the most
Okay.
recent version of the data, and then you write there, and then it goes syncs back to the cloud. So
Okay.
replication data management is it's very important for some industries. Insurance is huge
Mm,
in that, right? In banking is huge for that.
mm,
So healthcare is big. So yeah, there's solutions out there when your main focus is to go on the cloud, or if you have concerns of losing data in case the data center, you don't have access to the data center IP goes, something happens, right? You're
mm.
down for maybe 5 minutes, no, maybe a little longer, 10 minutes, and you lose tons of data. Well, it would basically just like kind of snap over to the local version. You go ahead and keep transacting. Users don't even notice a difference most of the times
Mm.
that they're not writing into the cloud right now. They're writing into a local environment. So essentially, they keep running. System does a net change between two environments. When there's a next internet is restored and connected back, and then boom, you're back, writing directly back into the cloud. So yeah, it's a concern, but there's there's processes, there's workflows around that.
What about, I've got a note here, vendor lock-in. So what's your thoughts on that as maybe an area of concern? Maybe if, for example, I'm a business, I've just signed up to um, Microsoft or Acumatica. Am I now kind of locked into this? Like now my data, I've always known my data to be in my server room. It's there for me. There's the database. I can do what I want with it. Now that's kind of out of my hands, and now it's in some other company's cloud. So, are there any considerations or are there any concerns in terms of vendor lock-in for these kind of people?
Yeah, what I would say is you own the data. So think of QuickBooks, right? Even if you get off of QuickBooks and you decide that, I want my data back, they're going to give you your data back. You're going to get it back like in a specific format. You'll get your data back, and you can do what you want with it. You won't lose that data. It's being backed up so many times that you'll get a version of that data, right? In case you decided that maybe a specific data center is down, Azure's down for 1 month. Oh my God, we want our most latest backup out. Yeah, sure, you get your backup and you go wherever you want, essentially. But yeah, it's these vendors are prepared. I think even for the worst case scenarios, they're prepared to ensure data integrity, to ensure uptime for customers. With how fast you could move data nowadays, right? They could take whole gigs and gigs and gigs of information and move it across a different part of the country or even different part of the world, right? Extremely fast now. So, from that standpoint, I wouldn't, for me, if I'm sitting there and worried about a vendor having my data, a vendor, having control of that, and me not being able to feel that ownership, right? I think where technology is and how far it's come now with all the clouds, cloud security, cloud performance, and all that. I think that's almost a non-conversation for me. I think it's you own that data. It's there for you anytime. But I could see the concern. You are coming from an on-premise environment. The only thing you know is you sleep at night knowing that that data is in this box. And you open up a door and the data's right there, right? And I get it, and then that's just a shift in mindset. I think the shift in IT strategy to when you go to the cloud, that data is still there, accessible to you and anytime. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very good question.
Do you think there's any other considerations that you need to take on board that we haven't covered?
I think when we say 100% for sure, you're going to get a higher ROI of your ERP investment when you go to the cloud, right? But one thing to consider is what type of subscription you're paying for ERP. There's a couple different models out there, right? You have user-based license that you pay per user, and then you have transaction-based licensing. So based on the number of transactions you do, you pay X per year based on transaction. What that allows you to do is have unlimited users, right? Let's say you're growing really fast, and instead of having to worry about I need to buy users, individual licenses, transaction based might be the way to go because you're more concentrated on growth essentially, right? So you're going to buy transaction levels of an ERP system versus maybe you want to buy by user. Essentially, you have X number of users. You really don't change that, so you want to have more of that cost controlled. Essentially, that's fine too. Both ways you go, right? You're still coming out ahead. It's a fixed one low fixed cost to get kind of over a dedicated IT team to get rid of servers and different hardware that are getting super expensive now, right? And you're getting upgrades. Full upgrade projects aren't happening anymore because that's happening overnight as part of your subscription plan. So, that's the only thing. The only other thing that I would want to add is what about if you're looking for ERP and you're concerned about different type of licensing models out there, subscription models. There's a few different ones out there, and try to find the one that works best for your business. Take a really deep look in your company's IT strategy. ERP is an
Mm-hmm.
important component of that.
Mm-hmm.
ERP, in a lot of sense, is a livelihood, for a lot of companies and where their data is the most valuable, right? I know you run your business day to day. So make a strong push to move that to the cloud. You're going to see huge benefits, not to mention ROI, massive ROI.
Yeah, I think this is certainly an area that's an inevitability. If you're not already on the cloud, I think at some point you're going to have to get on the cloud. I
Yeah,
don't think this is like an alternative
right.
technology. I think this is the natural progression of technology for ERP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nirav Shah. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. I swear, every time I talk to you, I learn something new. So can't thank you enough for your time. You're
No,
a
this is fantastic. We bounce a lot of good ideas, with each other. So hopefully the audience also finds it very informative. So definitely, we're going to keep this train moving.
Yeah, and if they haven't found something informative with ERP, they know that there's a pistachio latte out there that
Yeah,
needs to
there
be
is.
tried.
Phenomenal.
Well, until next time, Nirav.
Absolutely,
See
sir.
you on the next one.
Likewise. Take care.